There's a drive. Deep left center field. And history is made at Kauffman Stadium tonight. Jorge Soler with his 39th home run.
That home run mark for the Royals all time is yours for a great stroke. 39 homers. It was a no-doubter. Yep, that's worth a curtain call. That ball was way in. Hopefully they'll find it.
All right, welcome back to the Royal Way podcast. I'm your host, Nick Wyman. Welcome back for episode 4. We are a month in to the off season, it seems, for the Royals almost. I started this around the last week of the season, so I'd technically say, yeah, this is about the off season time for the Royals. And we have a couple big notes to get into here. We have today on the show be covering the Royals manager news that's happened in the weekly, all the rumors that are going around all the managers going on. This week in Royals history, we'll go down that memory lane right there. We'll have a special announcement that will be coming up later in the show, so stick around. We'll go around the league in the NLCS and the ALCS. We'll have Royals making the Olympic rosters for the qualifying team. There's 2 former Royals, or former Royal and minor leaguer for the Royals on that roster currently. And we'll have fan questions to wrap it all up to end today's show. So, start off, we have some manager news. We have Joe Maddon going to the Angels, obviously. Well, there's some rumors around the Royals. Carlos Beltran, a former Royal, also said that he is not interested in any job unless it's the New York Mets, which makes a ton of sense. He was there for most of his career. He was probably a Mets legend. He was really good. And I never saw him come to Kansas City, so it does not seem like that is likely to happen. And it seems like he will not be coming here to Kansas City. Another rumor going around is Pedro Grifol still interviewed with the Giants. We all know that for sure. We just need to know what his decision is. We don't know if he's going to be going there. The other rumor around the Giants affecting the Royals is Mike Matheny is supposedly interested in San Francisco. That's a big rumor because the Royals seem like everyone's saying they're the front runner for Mike Matheny, and the interest is in San Francisco, I guess, and means, Pedro Grifol and Mike Matheny, it seems like those are the 2 names that could end up, one go to the Giants and one can go to the Royals, and I think those are the 2 names that are going to fit with both those teams. One of them is going to go there, one of them is going to go to Kansas City. I don't know which one. If I had to pick, I think Matheny will end up in Kansas City. I don't think Pedro will go to the Giants, though. For some reason, I think he might just stay, and then the Giants will get somebody else. But it's a long offseason. You have no idea. Maybe Matheny likes the Giants job and goes there. We will not know until it happens. We have not heard anything really about the Royals. Just a lot of, the Arizona Fall League All-Star game was last week, like I said. And we're just waiting to see what happens. Joe Girardi, he resigned as the Team USA coach. And so he's looking to get back on managing, which is very interesting, knowing that, he was for the Yankees manager, and I would be shocked if he ended up here in Kansas City. I'd be completely shocked. It'd be out of left field. No pun intended there, baseball terms. But I'd be shocked to see him come out and be a Royals manager. So those are all your manager news. Not much going on around the manager news. We're just waiting, kind of sitting around, kind of in limbo right now, waiting to see what happens. This week in Royals history, we had a big 5 years ago. The Royals won the 2014 American League Championship Series, sweeping the Baltimore Orioles. Yes, if I would have told you this, it seems like a long time ago when both the Baltimore Orioles and the Kansas City Royals were playoff contenders. But, that was a great time. It was the first time the Royals made the World Series in forever. I remember watching the final out of the 9th inning, ground ball to Moose, throws it over the Hosmer at first, and the Royals rejoice as it was around 5, 6 o'clock. So remember they played a mid-afternoon game against the Orioles that time, and they got the sweep. And later on, went on to go to the World Series and lose to the Giants, but they got redemption and won in 2015. So that's this week in Royals history. Those are some of the best years in the last 5, 6 years in Royals memory. The turn of that decade in the 2010s. And the Royals are looking to push that for 2021-2020 season. We have around the league, we have the ALCS was postponed last night but they will play tonight. The Astros lead 2-1 over the Yankees as they play Game 4 tonight in New York. If I had to pick, I have the Astros winning that series still, as I did in my earlier episode where I picked the postseason, which my NL is completely wrong. My AL is pretty right, so I'm going to stick with that. On the NL side, we saw something we've never seen before. We saw the Cardinals get absolutely dominated and swept by the Washington Nationals. The Nationals lose the $300 million free agent Bryce Harper and make it to the World Series. We're one of the worst teams in the middle of May. Thought about firing Dave Martinez, but they come around and become the best record in baseball since then, and they have showed it and went all the way from the wild card game to the championship. Only 3 teams in history have ever done that, gone from since the format changed with 2 wild card teams in 2012. It was the 2014 Giants, who went on to win the World Series, the 2014 Royals, who went to the World Series and lost to that Giants team, and this 2019 Washington Nationals team. Those are your 3 teams in history to make it out of the wild card with 2 wild card teams to go to the World Series. So congratulations to the Washington Nationals. You're going to have a tough test in the World Series, but they've had a tough test all postseason. Looks like, the young guys like Juan Soto and company, they've been hauling it. And Howie Kendrick out of nowhere. A couple years ago, I couldn't remember what team he was on. And he's come out of nowhere, and he's had a great postseason, NLCS MVP. So good luck out to the Washington Nationals. Some other news, we have the U.S. Olympic qualifying rosters have been announced. They were announced on Monday, I believe, or Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. But, there's prospects like Joe Adele and company. There are 2 Royals, I should say in quotes, 1 former Royal and 1 minor leaguer for the Royal. So the 29-year-old from Tulsa, Brian Flynn, is on the Team USA team, a 6'7" Flynn. He was in the majors for the Royals and the Marlins. He spent most of the season in AAA with Omaha, and he elected free agency after the season. So Flynn, he's a ground ball pitcher as we've seen. He has a low 90s sinker and a low 80s slider in relief. And he's particularly good against lefties. So Brian Flynn, so far, he's on the Olympic qualifying roster. This is not technically the roster for the Olympics, but if he looks good in the qualifying and helps USA qualify for the Olympics, which they should, he might stick around and maybe a team sees him and picks him up. We'll see what happens with him. And the other one is a 23-year-old from Sioux City, Iowa. He played for the AA Northwest Arkansas team for the Royals. Daniel Tilo, he's a left-handed pitcher. He was Mr. Basketball in Iowa his senior year of high school. Decided to pursue baseball instead. He's 6'5", left-hander, who has good action, hits around 90 to 94 miles per hour, and he has a promising slider. So he can either work as a starter or a reliever. He's a left-handed pitcher. So 2 former Royal and a minor leaguer for the Royal, left-handed pitchers who may work as bullpen threats, may work as openers or starters. We don't know what the roster is going to look like completely, but those are the 2 Royals who have made the team for the qualifying rounds for the Team USA. They get started playing in, I think they start playing at the end of December and January to qualify for the Olympics next summer. So that should be interesting. So you have Olympic baseball crossing over with the major leagues, which will be super interesting. I'd like to see how they do. USA baseball and probably Japan and Puerto Rico and Cuba, those teams will probably be up there. The qualifying goes through the North American region, so we'll see how they do. And just one final announcement before we get into the fan questions. Not a big podcast today. I've talked to a couple people around, the Royals fandom. And in the next coming weeks, if you see a special guest on the show, then we have a special guest on the show. So keep a lookout. We may have a couple guests alternating. Maybe once every 2 weeks we have a guest on for a bit, and then we switch up to an episode where I just talk. Then we go to another episode where we have a guest. We may alternate it. It really depends who's busy at this time. I usually like to do them Thursday mornings and have them out to you by Thursday afternoon. And just keep on a lookout. You may see a special guest on the show. Maybe we have an interview. Maybe we have, just another guy out here, another girl. Who knows who we're going to have. We have a couple people I've talked to, and they were interested and say, hey, I want to be a guest on your show. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. So we'll see what happens. In the foreseeable future, just keep on a lookout for special guests. We may have, a call-in and have a special guest come in. And they'll give their feedback as well. and hopefully you guys enjoy what they bring to the table here on the Royal Way podcast. All right, in our final segment of the day, we have the fan questions. You can follow us on Twitter at the Royal Way Pod and reply to a tweet I usually put out Wednesdays. And you can reply, and I will read your reply and answer any questions that you put on there. So we have one question from at Royal Rupert this week. Do you see the team making roster changes this offseason in an attempt to contend in 2020? Or do they wait for 2021 and beyond? Good question, Rupert. I think this season will be about transitioning some of those transitioning some of those younger guys up to the majors. By midseason, we could see Brady Singer. We could see Jackson Kowar. We could see a lot of those. Nick Keith, we could see him. I don't think any of them are going to make the opening day roster, but I could see them maybe in June, July, maybe May if some guys struggle. We DFA some guys. I think those guys have a chance. I think this is the team where you save your money. I think they're not going to go all in the offseason. I don't think John Sherman, the new ownership, is going to go all in with the chips. I think we're going to play it like we always do and play to rebuild. We're going to try to, make the team entertaining like we did last year. Maybe, Jake Diekman, I could see him coming back, or like a James Shields pitcher coming back on a minimum deal. And I don't think there's many roster changes you can really make right now. I mean, the roster is pretty full. Depends who they DFA and stuff. I don't think they're really going to DFA many people. I think we're just going to keep the team what we have, and then if they struggle to start the year, then they'll hit the bricks. But I think it seems like they're aiming for the 2021 to make a contention, or 2022. So maybe 2-3 years out, I'd say. Next year, I think is going to be, I don't know. It's too hard to tell from right now. But I don't think they're going to make many roster moves to contend in 2020. But I think they wait till 2021 to answer your question in full. Good question. But yeah, that's the only question we have this week on the Royal Way Pod. But that's okay. It's an interesting question for the topic. And, you can follow us on Twitter. Again, as I said, the Royal Way Pod on Twitter. And you can reply to us in tweets. And I'll be sure to read them. So that is all for the show today. Not a big show again. Like I said, keep a lookout. We have some special guests maybe on the way. Maybe an interview or so. We'll see what we have. But yeah, before you go, you can follow us on Twitter, like I said, at the Royal Way Pod. You can follow our YouTube channel, the Royal Way Pod. And you can follow us on Podbean if you're listening on Podbean, is the Royal Way Pod as well. So you can follow us on all three of those platforms. You can also follow me on Twitter at Nick Wyman on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram at NickY23. So those are my shout-outs, I should say, for the week. Not much going on in Royals news. We got the ALCS wrapping up maybe this weekend. So keep on a lookout for that. Enjoy your week, Kansas City. You got a big football game tonight. The team's been struggling against the Denver Broncos tonight. We'll see how it goes, and hopefully the Chiefs can pull it off. Get out of the gutter like they have been doing. They've 0-2 in their last 2 home games. Go ahead and head into Denver mile high. We'll see how it goes for them. And we'll see you next week on the Royal Way Podcast. This is Nick Wyman, and I will see you next week.